Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining yet another one of our AIOps Power Hours today. Today, we will be talking about how to build custom agentic workflows for AIOps, and I'll also do a quick overview on what we currently have available out of the box. So today I'm joined by Carlos, and I'll let him introduce himself later. But just some housekeeping before we get started with the actual content for today. So throughout the presentation, you may ask some questions or we may make some statements that are a bit forward-looking. All the statements that we're making today about things other than content that's already out of the box and generally available are to the best of our knowledge, so please keep that in mind for any forward-looking statements we may make. In terms of housekeeping for today, we've saved time at the end for Q&A, but we are also going to be keeping an eye on the Q&A throughout the entire session. So please, for any questions you may have, put them in the Q&A module in Zoom. And if it's not already available to you, you may have to click the More section on the Zoom navigation in order to access the Q&A module. And again, we'll keep an eye on this throughout the entire session. This presentation will also be recorded and shared following this event through the email that you've used to register for this event. So in case you or anyone else on your team want to watch the session later or rewatch it, you'll be able to do that in about 10 business days. And after the event, you will also be prompted to fill out a short survey. So thank you in advance for any feedback you may have for today. So again, I'll let Carlos introduce himself not too long from now when he's presenting. But as for me, my name is Victoria Lowe, and I am one of the outbound product managers focusing on the fantastic world of ITOM AIOps, which again, today is just another session of AIOps Power Hour. So I hope you're excited and as passionate about AIOps as I am. So in terms of the agenda today at a high level, I will be going over the ITOM AIOps Agentic Workflows, which are currently available and out of the box. And then Carlos will talk about his custom agentic workflows that he's been able to create using AI Agent Studio. And again, we'll have time throughout the session for Q&A, so anything that you may want to ask, please put them in the Q&A module, and we'll either answer them throughout the session or at the end as well. So I have a question for you today to kick off today's session, and it's that, are you familiar with our current out-of-the-box agentic workflows for ITOM AIOps? We have released two for AIOps since the beginning of 2025, and I feel like I've talked about them a lot. But in case you haven't already learned about them, I just want to get a gauge. So 30 seconds into the poll, I feel like I can kind of get a gauge on what the results are and what the feel is of the group. Most of you do not know what is out of the box. That is fair. And that is great that I'll talk about it right now. But thank you for those who are aware, and letting me know that you have learned about it so far. And then without further ado, and because a lot of people today don't really know what's out of the box currently, it's a great time for me to talk about what we have. So, as a quick overview of how the ServiceNow AI agents work, you are able to first build agentic workflows. And after building agentic workflows, so a set process in which you want AI agents to work, and you've defined these workflows, then we are able to then use the AI agent orchestrator to pull together the relevant AI agents in order to address a specific use case. And once these AI agents are orchestrated by the AI agent orchestrator, pretty straightforward there, then the AI agents know what specific roles that they need to perform based off of the instructions that they have been defined to do. And then the AI agents are then able to leverage existing technologies and additional resources in order to perform their various responsibilities that they have, ultimately executing the end-to-end agentic workflows that we have either offered out of the box or your organization has built custom. Now, in terms of the agentic workflows that we offer currently out of the box for ITOM AIOps, The very first one that we released in all of ITOM, not only AIOps as well, is called Triage and Analyze Alerts. What Triage and Analyze Alerts does is that it's focused on increasing the efficiency of operators for the initial triage and analysis of alerts so that for very manual work that operators often have to do repeatedly just to figure out if alerts are worth their time or could just be simply closed, we want AI agents and we're having AI agents do that initial work for them. So the specific AI agents that we have enlisted in order to do this and to automate the initial triage and analysis of alerts is the alert handling AI agent, which makes sure that the alerts are signed and acknowledged and so on. Then you may be familiar with alert analysis. So we have had this as available as a skill for over a year now, but we also have it in the form of an AI agent so that when operators are looking at alerts after the triage and analysis AI agentic workflow has happened, they're able to understand a summary of the individual alert or the grouped alert that the AI agents are looking at, as well as additional information on probable root cause and potential next steps or remediation actions that can be taken. And we also go further, similar to our alert investigation skill that we have, looking at historical incidents and summarizing the information on resolvers as well as resolution notes if they're available, so that operators immediately know what their next steps can be for additional contacts and escalation if needed. And something that we didn't necessarily have before in the form of a skill is also the alert history analyzer, where we're analyzing historical alerts based off of CI and metric name to identify historical trends of whether or not this alert happens every day on Monday or every week on Monday at 9 a.m., hence when people are probably logging in for the first time since the weekend, or if this alert is just always closed when it's open in the past as well. This is extremely valuable knowledge for operators to know so that they can understand if this could just be noise or if this is a significant alert as well. And all this information that is being dug up and surfaced by AI agents is then saved into the work notes of the alert. So while the operators are working on other tasks and other high priority um, pieces of work that they also have to do, the AI agents are surfacing all the information so that once they're done, the operator can just go back to the alert and understand, okay, based off of everything that the AI agents have told me now I am informed and can decide whether or not I should continue the investigation of this alert or if I could just simply close it. And the second agentic workflow that we released for AIOps was the Analyze Alert Impact Agentic Workflow. And this is an extremely impressive, I'm also very biased, agentic workflow to me because we're not only able to leverage internal information within the CMDB, including service offerings, business services, technical services, and so on, but we're also able to leverage insights from third-party agents. Because as an organization and as a product, we're trying to meet all of you where you're at, and we understand that you have a lot of data that is potentially siloed within these other third-party APM and observability tools. And we want to be able to surface that information for you without users having to switch between tools, which can definitely either decrease efficiency or maybe they don't even have access to these tools and it makes it a lot harder for them to get the information that they need. So through this agentic workflow that helps you analyze alert impact, we can not only, again, surface insights from third-party AI agents, again, breaking down data silos, but we're also able to leverage information on related incidents as well as related cases. So if you have end users internally or externally reporting issues on the services that are being impacted by these alerts, that information can also be surfaced to the operator to further emphasize the need to respond to these alerts faster, rather than brushing them off and not acknowledging them and addressing them right away. So in terms of the specific AI agents that we have as part of this Analyze Alert Impact Agentic workflow, is that we have the User Impact Analysis AI agent, where we're looking at incidents to determine how many users are impacted and leveraging data from, again, open incidents and user complaints. So, again, cases as well as incidents. We also currently support third-party agents from New Relic, Kentic, and Dynatrace, where we're able to retrieve additional insights from these third-party vendors and AI agents as needed. This information is not necessarily saved in the work notes like the triage and analyze agentic workflow because we do recognize that in situations like this, where it's not historical data saved within ServiceNow, that the information can become stale, and we don't want to save stale data to the alert itself. And then with regards to available information in the CMDB, we're also able to surface any information on business service impact as well as app service impact and the relevant owners for these various services as well. So that wraps up what I have to talk about specifically for the out-of-the-box agentic workflows currently available for AIOps. So if you answered no earlier, I hope now you can say that yes, you do know what is offered out of the box. And shortly, very shortly, I'll hand it over to Carlos to talk about what you're probably here for, learning on how to build custom agentic workflows for AIOps. But just some things I want to share. So in the chat right now, I'll paste some links that hopefully are useful to you, including some useful resources. And let's see if I can enter it, as well as links to sign up for our future webinars, which includes the AIOps Power Hour, which is, again, a continuous series that we have going on where ITOM experts talk about either topics like today, building custom agentic workflows, or other use cases that we want to explore that we think would be very useful to your organizations, including next week's session, which is talking about proactive customer service with ServiceNow CRM. Here we'll talk about and also do a live demonstration on how you can enable proactive customer service by using AIOps in conjunction with CRM. So if you are curious about that session, or if you're curious about any of the previous AIOps Power Hours that we've held, I've included links to sign up for future webinars in the chat, as well as a link to a blog post where I've been linking all of our previous AIOps Power Hours as well, hosted by our wonderful ITOM COE teams. And also, just a heads up, if you're curious about what's going to be coming out in Q4 for 2025, we'll be hosting those webinars in January. So keep an eye out for those as well. So before I hand it over to Carlos, I just want to get a gauge on maybe you were or weren't aware of the out-of-the-box agentic workflows for AIOps, but have you used AI Agent Studio before? And with that, and while I take a look at the results, I'll hand it over to Carlos whenever he's ready to talk about the custom AIOps agentic workflows, and also so he can do an introduction.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let me go ahead and if I can take over the sharing once you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And let me go ahead. And let's jump in. Okay, so perfect. Hopefully everybody can see. Let me just adjust. We're going to be spending time in product, but of course I've got to show at least a couple slides to set the context, and hopefully you can kind of see these slides come up. So again, my name is Carlos Peterson. I'm part of the ITOM Center of Excellence for the Americas here. I've got a few of my teammates kind of ready to answer some questions for you as well. But by all means, I want to make this as interactive, and let's get into product. I think that's what we want to see. First of all, if we think about AI ops, and this is all kind of leading, when we typically see some of the skills or, and we're continuing publishing these agentic workflows. One thing that we're going to kind of focus on today is that there are a lot of signals that we can have an agentic agent, start to reason on. And the reason I show this slide, and you may have seen this from other webinars or maybe from various presentations from ServiceNow, is that, from an AI ops perspective, where it's all about ingesting not just events, right, which are kind of considered reactive. We have metric intelligence for time series data. We have logs where really from an unsupervised perspective, that's our secret sauce to uncover patterns within the logs or aspects of logs, meaning sys logs, network logs, application logs, and then give an early indication that there's a problem. Well, from an agentic perspective, right, it's this becomes various sources that our agents can also analyze, right? If we're seeing an emerging issue that we're starting to cluster from events, maybe the agents themselves can go out and grab, much like in other use cases, grab raw data to reason, to understand, is this in fact an actionable, something that is really significant, and that will determine maybe next steps, whatever that is, right? So this is just kind of the ecosystem that really defines AI ops, but now we're going to kind of add that level of autonomy from an agentic perspective. So when we think about even the agentic workflows that we provide out of the box, we kind of see things in these four buckets, so to speak, right? First, we've got a workflow, and even though we're going to show prompting, things can be triggered, meaning that from an autonomous, if we have some criteria of events or other signals, things can just happen in the background. Today, we're going to kind of demonstrate more, initiating almost like a response or opening up a question using NLQ or actually executing a specific workflow. But keep in mind, all of this can be triggered easily from certain types of events or clustered some kind of correlation. But when we start to build a custom workflow, it all really starts with the big question. All right, well, why are we doing this, right? And the idea that kind of spawns between deterministic workflows, which are good and still widely used, is that we want to have some sense of reasoning, not just an if-then statement that we typically use in workflow for years, right? That's the DNA of the platform. But the idea is that ultimately we want to understand why are we building out this custom workflow. The second is, all right, well, how are we going to start to accomplish this, right? And that's where we have an agent orchestrator. And think of that as being kind of the mastermind that understands there's various agents that can go out and go gather some information, maybe do some reasoning, and maybe they're doing those simultaneously, or maybe it's in kind of a parallel, or one after another, right? If we have kind of some sentiment, positive or negative, that then would then have another agent do some sort of orchestration or workflow as well. So the idea that the orchestrator is aware of available agents, and the way that we see kind of agentic workflows and the way that the typical skills are kind of unfold to an agent is that these are reusable. You could have a very specific agent that may only apply to one workflow, but you'll find even if I need to get data related to outages or incidents or changes, there could already be an out-of-the-box agent that could be reused for our custom workflow. So That's that allows you to kind of get to outcomes very quickly. And the agents really have, a number of tools. And this is, okay, well, the who is the agents, the what is, how are they going to go about accomplishing kind of their mission in life? And essentially, this is really where we can, it's almost any use case can be solved because if you think about what I stated before, workflow is the DNA of the ServiceNow platform. We have flow designer. We have integration hub spokes to communicate. We have now the a data fabric to maybe communicate with other agents or off platform. We have scripting. We have a number of things that now can easily be reused or at least made available for the agents to do things very quickly, right? So let's kind of bring this more into reality. So here are some use cases. I'm going to show you live something I built actually just yesterday for the webinar. It's going to be fairly basic, but we'll strip it back because you always want to start somewhere. But this is an example I did with a customer. So where you're looking at is that there's some sort of impact and maybe we want to allow our Now Assist and an agentic workflow to be initiated to kind of validate a few things, right? So maybe there's some application service that might be impacted, or maybe it's just a grouping of technology stacks that there's a problem, right? So it's going and mining, maybe an agent that's mining specifics about even the configuration, the quality of the configuration data. Sorry about that. And then next, what'll be part of the evaluation is that maybe another agent is now looking at, let's just look at that specific CI. Maybe it's a server, compute, router, switch. It doesn't really matter. And let's go ahead and look at a few of the attributes and things that might be happening within the recent, let's say the last 24 hours or 30, the last 2 days, et cetera, and then provide, some insights very quickly, right? Start bringing those up so that the operator or the persona can evaluate that. And meanwhile, if you aren't looking at maybe some anomalies, in this case, this happens to be one of our health log analytics, right? A log anomaly. And by clicking, for example, I want to make that workflow very easy to get to the relevant signals. So there can be multiple anomalies that I really need to investigate. So next is, kind of that summarization, but also validating. For example, in this case, we have our own agent client collector. We have metric intelligence, which you might be familiar with. We have different adapters or connectors to push time series data, which is, baseline, and we use multivariate analysis, right? But the idea here is that we have our own agent client collector. It is not only performing that deep dive discovery, but it's also policy based in which signals it can collect, and it can coexist with other monitoring tools. So in this case, it's collecting events, it's collecting metrics, as you see here, as well as even logs. So the idea is that we can even start to present in context, metric intelligence where, grab kind of maybe the featured metrics for, at least in this case, we're still hyper focused on a single configuration item. And if you notice, even, some things are being highlighted. The data is being actually reviewed, so to speak. And I'll get to the reasoning piece here. So again, this is just a custom, a custom workflow. And then finally, after looking at the configuration item, maybe it's tied to an application service. It's expanded now based on the application. Are there other things happening from event perspective? All right, let's also evaluate other signals such as the metrics, maybe even logs. Now it's come up with basically a reasoning. and it's suggesting, hey, based on all the data, and this is part of kind of the summary of this custom workflow, is that this server actually seems to be, if you saw some of the anomalies, there happened to be a memory leak, and there could be suggested actions, right? And that could lead to maybe it being manual and operator initiated restart of Tomcat, or maybe there are some autonomous actions to clear out the problem or remediate the problem. But again, the idea is that you're allowing those agents to kind of go and grab and reason on data in the speed of a fraction of a second that maybe someone has to evaluate. And maybe that data ends up in the work notes of an incident, or even the work notes of the alert or the grouping of alerts, right? So this is just happens to be one example I worked on with the customer. Okay. And this is just to show you, here's metric intelligence, right? The metric explorer that you would see. And we're, again, in the Now Assist panel, that same data is being captured over maybe a certain time frame. And then that becomes just another input, right? Because it's not just, tables, records in a table in ServiceNow that the AI agents can grab and evaluate and review and also reason, but it can be metric data, right? It can be log anomalies. It can be anything that is useful for getting to the outcome itself. All right. So what we're going to cover is kind of a simple use case. Again, I just built it for yesterday um, for the webinar itself. And essentially what I've called this is my blast radius analyzer. I thought it was kind of a cool name, but essentially what it's doing is it's looking, I'm going to simulate just a simple outage, and we're using our normal clustering. This is all things that if you're not, we have other webinars, we get into kind of the core components of AI ops and all the different signals and things of that sort. So if you're not familiar with some of the things I show, I would definitely go back to some of our historic or archived webinars, and there's a lot of great information there. But this is going to be a use case. And again, keep in mind that everything I show you or showed you can be triggered automatically, right? So the idea that you have to sit and manually initiate a workflow, that's in many cases that's not reality. In some cases, we're summarizing, you're working an issue in real time with a team. It may, you may want both. But for today, from a kind of delivery of the content, it's going to be all kind of manually initiated. With that said, we're kind of evaluating. I had this concept yesterday, and I was like, man, blast radius. All right, well, maybe what it can do is look at maybe start from one correlation and then evaluate all the kind of the alerts that have been correlated. Look at potential root cause indicators, if there are any. That could be changes, deployments. Also look at the correlation quality, and by this, I'm evaluating tags that we're dynamically creating from either topology or from the CMDB. And then also considering this temporal analysis is I want the agent to, in this case, a single agent, not keeping it very simple, to also kind of evaluate the time frame of the alerts themselves. And, is this kind of, did this happen around the same time, which, if you think about an emerging outage, typically availability happens fairly quick, right? So that these are the things. And then at the end, I'm trying to get at least some reasoning on what might be the next steps, and What and is this something that might be maybe even a good candidate for a major incident, right? Anything I show you here can automate. We can have another agent, or even as part of this workflow, either ask for you know, kind of the next steps, meaning I could be the gatekeeper to say, yes, go ahead and create a major incident or promote the existing incident to major incident. Anything is possible. Hopefully, we'll give you at least a little bit here that you can see the art of the possible and meet any of the specific scenarios you have. All right. With that said, I am definitely an in-person, I would say, from a product perspective. What we have is a virtual environment. I'm going to kick off. By the way, we do have anything you see in our we have utilities for replaying alerts. So if you capture, let's say, an outage, and you want to be able to replay that over and over, we do have an update set that you can reach out maybe to your sales folks, and we can get you a lot of little I would say utilities and kits definitely that can be applied to non-prod instances, where you can use to help you kind of build out either build out some additional development that you're doing with enrichment or clustering, or even just to showcase internally some of the if we had certain things in place, this outage that happened could have been handled differently, through automation, workflow, or even an agentic workflow. Okay, so I'm going to replay. This actually happens to be a true outage itself. I'm going to just replay a bunch of things here and then go back to our service operations workspace, and let's just let the issue unfold here in a minute. We should start seeing everything's dynamic. This is service operations workspace. It's variant based in the sense that we have different personas based on roles. A persona could be IT operations, it could be an agent, major incident manager, it could be L2, L3, it could be a site reliability engineer. But we're kind of viewing the world, or looking at maybe even the same issue through the optics of that persona that we belong to. So you can already see some things that are starting to group together. I'll give it just a second here, and then we'll kind of get into showcasing the agentic workflow again, which I mentioned it can be triggered, but for our presentation here, we're going to kind of initiate this manually. So let's give it a second. Grouping, and we should be pretty close to that. All right, so from this perspective, and what I'm going to do is maybe just kind of run you through. There we go. This happens to be a virtual alert. This is a grouped alert, and I'll kind of get right into the agentic, but just for folks that aren't familiar, right? This service operations workspace. This happens to be Express List, and Express List allows me to kind of view this. This happens to be a correlation of alerts into one actionable, potentially notification, actionable incident, and things of that sort. What we do have, nothing new, but much like low-hanging fruit is being able to even analyze or summarize prompting, or what we call sys, on all of, and this can be all done automatically on all the alerts, which then leverages our own large language model, right? Now Assist, we have our own custom built that really understands the common data model, understands CSDM, understands the CMDB and relationships. And we have all that metadata, the value of AIOps on a unified and that common data model. We immediately have access to everything on the platform, meaning that if there's incidents, changes, you're not external, you're not doing things unnatural and doing REST queries or things that would be technical debt, right? We immediately have all kinds of access here. So this is kind of summarizing the issue itself. This is not necessarily the custom agentic workflow, but just summarization at its best, right? And this could be even prompted automatically. We could even update. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and update the description of this correlation itself, kind of getting a better understanding of the issue at hand. And I'll just kind of close this for a second while that completes. And then obviously we have the our link view giving us, in this case, we've clustered this based on tags themselves. As you can see, we dynamically can create tags even from topology, right? Not a tag to us can be, maybe tags that are being sent in from the event source. It could be enrichment, dynamic enrichment as we bind to CIs, any attribute, custom attribute that can be useful for decoration, or even again filtering. If we start to filter, any number of these can be made available, right? So this happens to be creating alert tags based on walking relationships. So these are what we have here is based on that summary. We have some issue in a virtual cluster where there seems to be an availability issue, and there's a V. In fact, if we look at some of the alerts here, we've got ESX servers, we have data stores that are having problems, cross-domain, easy for us to do, meaning cross-tool correlation. I just kind of throw in a separate source, vRealize, Dynatrace, and even the V cluster, right? So this is purposely built, and again, we're not getting into the clustering. That's kind of what we think is kind of one of the core value statements of just even our event management layer of AI ops. But what could be interesting is that, well, tell me a little more. So in this case, what I'm going to do is open up our Now Assist. And I've created, and I'll peel back the onion, but let's take a look at this. I called it the blast radius analyzer, which I kind of set up. So at this point, what I should be able to do, in fact, if I'm in the record, it may ask me for the alert itself, but it's all contextual. So if you're inside a record, it will then try to determine automatically that, hey, that's what you're looking at. In this case, it happens to be a virtual alert. And it is then trying to grab, again, in this case, it's using a single agent that is kind of evaluating the blast radius. It's even looking at things outside, like in a 30-minute window. Again, this is just one of my dev instances. And it's even saying, hey, there might be a candidate, right? Maybe there's multiple things happening that might be related that didn't get captured as part of that grouping, right? In this case, it's saying, hey, there's one alert. And if I click on that, right, it's actually drilling me in. This could be also related, in this case, to this outage itself. In this case, it is closed, but maybe it was active. So it's trying to at least raise up or surface up either single alerts or even grouped alerts that might be related to this emerging outage that we're seeing, at least in a virtual cluster. And so, it's doing a few things. Root cause you can extend it, right? It's trying to make some understanding, or at least based on the things that it's collecting, right? It's assessing the various. In this case, there's a number of availability alerts that have been clustered. ESX availability. We've got the actual virtual cluster is now reporting kind of a metric that it's unavailable, and then you have a bunch of data stores, right? So it's assessing that and saying, you know what, this is a high severity alert, and it could grab even other things that could be related to problems, a history of changes, which it should do automatically in AI ops, but assuming that maybe some of that data is not there. Well, it's provided us a candidate, and then it has a series of at least what it's reasoned as potential next step actions. So the idea is that if you have a chain, much like I showed you what I did with a customer, is that now that reasoning can be passed back to the controller. And then the idea is that the controller then can say, well, we got another agent. Let's go ahead and at least put in the major incident management queue dynamically because we want to respond. We want to maybe understand if there is potential impact, whether that is from a user community or from other systems not being able to access, et cetera. And that could be very specific to another agent, either doing an assessment or even just creating, maybe a major incident candidate that we need someone from that team to validate and then act on, right? So this is just to give you one, a real time, very simple, again, operator initiated. And then if you see the presentation, one thing I'll peel back the onion is that I can prompt. This is the beautiful thing is I can prompt all of this HTML kind of presentation. I can kind of gamify without writing any kind of code. And I think from that perspective, what we're going to do is kind of peel back the onion on this very basic, what we call agentic workflow. Okay, so it's kind of like when you see a cooking show, right? You before you get into the ingredients and things, you may show the end result. So now let's go back and go to what we call the AI Agent Studio. So again, we publish, meaning we ServiceNow, the community. We have the field can now start to publish various agents, agentic workflows, and that can be mined and also shared so that you're not always starting from scratch. Now the business units of specific, for example, Now Assist for ITOM, there are going to be agentic workflows that are fully supported and offered, and it's a great place to get started. But again, if we kind of look into our blast radius analyzer, I may have specific requirements, that I want to solve, maybe autonomously. So this is where we start, right? We start with this higher level, what I would say, agentic workflow. And if you can actually have a lot of this generated automatically. And what I mean by that, you can prompt like you can make it the easy button, so to speak. And there's a lot of content on out on communities around AI Agent Studio, getting started, really getting into the creating the framework and kind of even giving you sample prompts that could be very effective. But in my case, I actually started creating the descriptions, and you could even use like a Claude or a ChatGPT or your flavor to help you with some of this. And a lot of what I always like to do is take a look at something that's maybe out of the box or something that someone in the community's done and kind of look at the details, right? I'm not going to cover everything, but the idea is that, I kind of started my early agentic creation from, someone that actually published something. And then I was like, all right, well, let's see if I started maybe going a little further and instead of just some simple steps. In fact, a lot of this was assisted by generative AI. And this is kind of the outline for my controller to accomplish my outcomes. So in this case, this is kind of a list of steps, and those list of steps then have a number of agents, right? These are AI agents that do something. And in my case, I have this blast radius assistant, but there could be multiple, as I mentioned, right? And especially if I showed you that the previous custom agentic workflow, there's one that's kind of evaluating the quality of the CI, CMDB data, giving it a score, and then another one that's looking at based on the CIs, the alerts themselves, and even related alerts that might be, based on a service map, and then looking at other metrics and things of that sort. In this case, very simple, um, uh, a a tool, or I should say, an AI agent that is really analyzing a few things that I'm trying to accomplish, right? This concept of blast radius, of looking at a temporal consideration, looking at other alerts that may have similar tags, like location. Maybe in this case, I'm creating the virtual cluster, the virtual data center. All these things are kind of evaluated. So again, now my agent has its own set of steps, right? And part of the tools is that I want it to be very aware. In fact, I don't think I had to tell it what alert I was on. If I was looking at a configuration item, we want to make it very contextual, and so that it can assume. You can always add as part of these prompts is, hey, are you sure this alert is what you want to evaluate? And that's really up to you, right? To do that. But that can be easily added. And here is kind of the sample prompts. Now, one thing I mentioned before is, it's not just text. I personally love kind of this gamification approach, and I use that term very loosely in the sense that, if you just spit out, especially when you're dealing as an observability persona or IT operations persona, and you just get a lot of text, it's hard to digest that, right? So that's where I start prompting. Well, I'll show you what the tool looks like, but there's, the output of that. I want to be able to kind of put into, in an HTML style format. In fact, I had a link, keep within the service operations workspace, that any candidates, I want to be able to just click on that, right? At least if there's user interaction with it. And that is where I didn't have to write any of that. It was all inferred based on the prompting itself. Now, I do standardize on some colors and branding that is very specific to ServiceNow. So I'm using all the colors, but I actually just put that in the prompt itself, right? And the more data you have, you'll be surprised how dynamic and you're really getting to the end result. And what I always say is, I can, again, I just made this, we can give you the sample, but you'll find lots of samples to work on and refine. Okay. All right, so now we have our prompts, and in the prompts we can put a lot of logic in there, that really helps the AI agent understand kind of the boundaries, the target, and also allow the reasoning to, the scope of the reasoning, right? And that's where you can get very creative. Now it's about, well, how's it getting that data? So if we say save and go next, in my case, there's two tools that this one agent has. One, I use Flow Designer a lot. So in fact, if you notice, it says Add Tool. Look at all these options you have, right? In Flow Designer, I have a flow action, which actually I created initially for just a normal workflow. And that's the beautiful thing, is there's reusable artifacts that maybe you're using for a flow. Guess what? That same flow action or subflow can be used by an agent, right? So that's exactly what I did. So I have in this case, this is a flow action that is essentially taking a starting point of an alert and it's doing a bunch of stuff, right? It's kind of analyzing, et cetera. Well, I'm making the agent making that available to the agent itself. Now, this flow action, there's typically inputs and outputs, right? And this is all just Flow Designer 101. But the input is looking for the alert sys ID. So then I've just created, just in case, as part of my prompting as well, is for example, if you're looking at from service operations workspace or it's triggered automatically, I got to convert that alert number to a sys ID. So very simple script I put together. Again, you could use Now Assist for helping you with just generating perfect JavaScript, but it's running autonomously. There's no output. I just want it to take if there is an alert number, go get the sys ID because that is going to be needed by the flow action. In my case, the flow action to process and do its analysis, right? Um, uh, from that starting point, and if I click here, just to give you an idea, right? This is you have a bunch of flow action, or in this case, this is a flow action, but you could have subflows that are called any number of things. But typically, you've got to be able to pass in whatever the expected input is. It could be multiple. In my case, I'm just making sure in part of my prompting, if I don't have the sys ID, go get it, right? Pretty simple. Okay. So with that said, now that I have these two and my prompting, you can also set up a trigger. And a trigger is, you know what, I want this to be maybe both. It can be initiated by, some user that's kind of investigating things. But a lot of autonomous IT is, man, just make this work automatically. And maybe there's certain types of criteria. So I could, say something like, hey, you know what? Basically at the end of the day, whether they're anomalies or they're, alerts, that it's probably going to be some set of alerts that are created from any of the signals. So I'd give it a name. Maybe this is the, I would say the blast radius trigger, right? And then, at this point, I could say, well, what table, right? It could be any table. In this case, it's the EM alert, which is the alert table. And then I could even put conditions. You know what? Blah, blah, blah. It has to be a virtual alert, right? The parent alert, it has to be open. It has to, maybe it has a certain tag. It maybe has something in the description, etc. And that minimally could be your trigger, right? For that. So you can also add some more complicated, I would say, like a custom script. Maybe you want to also, tie in some additional logic for, some related tables and things of that sort, right? A little more complex, but you have all that flexibility to generate that trigger. I'm going to close this, not necessarily looking to do that. But you have once you have your trigger in place. But again, the trigger would probably be more appropriate at potentially um, the agentic workflow. So you may have a reason to do it. Remember, this blast radius assistant is the AI agent, and there can be multiple that are tied to one or more agentic workflows. But I would probably define that trigger I started to create probably at the higher level, right? Which would then kind of orchestrate, multiple agents. All right. With that said, I may want to make this available, as far as the agentic or the Now Assist. Do I want to make it so it can be promoted and for certain users or roles, they could see that as a box that they could start interacting with that workflow. In this case, I'm going to go and say, I'm just going to go back and go to create. So once you build the logic, and again, we have a lot of content on communities. I'm going to go ahead and let's say we're going to test this. So this is kind of before you promote it and make it available to your consumers, like you see here, right? I'm going to close this. It's good, very timely for that to show up. But I want to take this blast radius analyzer, which is the workflow. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this alert and let me just go to my parent alert. I'm going to help it along a little bit and I'm just going to pull, remember the sysid. Well, actually, you know what? Let's pull the alert number because then it's going to this is probably how we would test it. So what we're still in is the AI Agent Studio. And obviously I want to be able to test. We do have versioning, so you can now as you start to build on your agentic workflow or even the agents, right? It becomes important to be able to version and track that and maybe revert back, good development skills 101, I would say. So I'm just going to go ahead and start a test. And this is really where you can start to see all the logging directly. So in this case, I'm basically simulating what we already went through, right? So the orchestrator, you can kind of see it visually happening in real time. And you can see some of the reasoning. You can kind of start tracking all the logs or review it at the end of the day. This will be similar to the Now Assist panel. This is kind of your logging and interaction. You can also see a lot of, the reasoning that's done here, right? And that'll give you an idea of what the payload looks like. And, all right, now that I got this, maybe I want to take part of this data and do, that could be passed on to another agent. So even from the studio, again, I probably spent, well, to be honest, about little under an hour creating this workflow single agent. And then even the prompting, I had to modify it a bit, right? I didn't have to write any code for the HTML. That was all from the prompting, but I can validate it very quickly. I was like, in fact, some of the colors, I was like, well, let's go back to the ServiceNow branding, and I can easily see, all of the logging, how it's being interpreted and outputted, and even some of the reasoning that how it was deduced, right? So the idea, just like, if you're familiar with Flow Designer and you test your subflow, your flow action, and you're able to kind of see the details, the steps, and if there any issues or things that weren't expected, same concept, right? And this is all done here in the AI Agent Studio, right? So again, the details of the flow itself, probably not the important part, but the way that you go about it, I think from my perspective, taking something that's already out there, published by the field or by, that comes out of the box, and just very easily kind of dissecting it and say, all right, now I got it. Let's go and start building it in AI Agent Studio, and then just agent by agent. You can even test. We tested the agentic level, but you can just start by testing just your agents at what is this agent's purpose, and let's get it to a point where yeah, that's my version one, and then how is that going to accomplish the larger workflow, and just systematically start to build out your agents. And then if you do find problems, you could just copy all this, right? And then pop it into your flavor generative AI and say, explain to me, where the error is. Why am I not seeing this or that? Very quickly, you'll see. Again, I did this under an hour, and a fairly simplistic agentic workflow. But you can start. Hopefully, you see the power that, hey, maybe this agent is going out and talking to Dynatrace, talking to another agent outside, and getting data that's not necessarily something that would be residing in ServiceNow. Go and use the Fabric Connect to search Jira details and grab that as part of an input for reasoning, right? For whatever your agentic workflow, what you're trying to accomplish, it is endless. And having all that metadata, the framework, and all available on the platform, that's why we're getting such high marks generically about Now Assist and our agentic maturity, even in this early market. We have governance and all the things that we're not going to cover on this call, but that's the exciting thing because now we can start to solve problems that, may have been difficult even from a very deterministic workflow, because now we can put some reasoning, we can put some allow it to decide to a certain extent, and we can always put those I would say gates as well, so that we don't do any unintentional actions and things of that without some level of validation. But I would say jump in if you can get access to an instance that has Now Assist, and you can just start to take a very simple use case and try to first dissect something that's out of the box or provided by the field, and then really try to anything you can dream up. I'm serious. It's gotten me so excited and our team, that this has really opened up a whole nother, I would say, value and value realization for AI ops, and also just generically, where generative AI is really pushed forward, a lot of I would say outcomes in a much truncated time frame. So enough of me rambling on. Hopefully you got a little excited there, seeing a little bit of how the ingredients were mixed up to a final product, and some of the things that you can start to leverage today. With that said, Victoria, I'm going to kick it back to you. You want to wrap it up?
For sure. So thanks so much, Carlos, for that fantastic demonstration on building custom agentic workflows and going really deep into how you built the AI agent right there. I see a lot of clapping emojis. There were some comments saying, wow, that's so awesome with the output that you created, because it is honestly very visually impressive as well. So again, kudos to you, Carlos, and thank you so much for showing us how you built this and also building this for our session today and just for the session. And the person who also said, wow, that's awesome, briefly put up their hand. So it's a nod right there as well. Um, just some final housekeeping things before we wrap up today's session. And again, thank you so much for everyone for sticking throughout this amazing call today, mainly ran by Carlos. So I'm just sharing out in the chat just resources again where you can access the community for ITOM, as well as information on what was released in Zurich and how you can sign up for future ITOM webinars, including the Power Hour that's happening next week. Same day, same time. Well, same day of the week, same time. November 12th, again at 12 p.m. Eastern Time or 9 a.m. Pacific Time as well. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. But again, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much to the wonderful ITOM Center of Excellence, who not only ran the call today and also was here to support the entire time in Q&A as well. So again, if you want to learn more from our fantastic SCs about today's session, please feel free to scan the QR code in the top right corner or access information through or sign up through the link that I've also posted in the chat. And yeah, without further ado, I will stick around for a minute or two longer, but regardless, hope you have a great rest of your day.